Good afternoon, Whitby Presbyterian Church. My name is Greg Steibel, and I have just a few things I wanted to share with you. Yesterday, we had a session meeting, and so I wanted to give you a quick update about some of the things that we talked about. The first thing that we did was we passed a sexual harassment policy. This is something that probably we should have had a long time ago. I don't know, but we have one now. The presbytery requires it, the state requires it, a very important thing to have. Not that we ever expect anything bad to happen, but now if something does, we know what to do. So that is good. We also spent some time talking about what returning to the sanctuary may be. We talked a little bit about a timeline, we talked about some of the obstacles, and I have actually some pretty good news. One of the obstacles that we mentioned a while ago about returning to the sanctuary is basically the state of the sanctuary as far as the wires and the cameras and the lights and everything. Trying to get all of that in order before we come into that space. And Jim has been working very hard on this, so have some other people. And we're pretty close on that. All the wires are able to be tucked away. All of the equipment basically can go into its place. We have plans for better installation, more permanent installation, but we think we've figured it out. The weird part is, in order to provide good quality worship at home, we have to have a little bit of extra light power, and we want to make sure to maintain a good quality worship experience for those of you who do decide to stay home when we return to the sanctuary for any number of reasons. And so we need good light. And so to have good light, right now we have a ladder holding some lights at the top pointed at the chancel. And that's great when there's no one in the sanctuary. But it doesn't always work when there's other people there. So what we're looking at right now is pushing that ladder all the way to the side, over some pews. Yeah, it's a pretty big ladder. And then getting a matching ladder for the other side of the sanctuary, so that then we would have good light coming onto the chancel so everyone at home can see. So a few small steps, nothing too big. The other big thing that we talked about with regards to coming back into the sanctuary, one of the things that the state requires and also the presbytery requires and frankly good sense requires is having some sort of a written policy of mitigating any risk. This gives us guidance as far as what we will be able to do in the sanctuary, who will be able to do that, what worship will be like, what we will do in case of an emergency, all these different things. As you very well know, this COVID stuff is rapidly changing right now. Numbers are getting good, vaccinations are getting good. Some of these requirements may change, but we have to base our work on what we know now. We hope that in the future it'll get better, but we have to mitigate risk that is involved now, today. So this is a huge conversation. We already spent 2.5 hours in the session talking not just about that, but we couldn't get that done. So we have created a small committee to talk about that, draft a policy and give it to the session. We'll have then a special session meeting sometime shortly after Easter to go ahead and approve that document, and then we can move forward, which is really, really great. Now, I mentioned Easter, and that's because Easter is coming up. Resurrection Sunday is coming up, which means Lent is coming up, and I wanted to give you another Lenten prayer practice. And this one I learned actually sitting right next to John. We're going to be talking about speed-written cinquains. A cinquain is a very formalized type of poem. Now, I'm not a poet, but I can do these things, and I think you can too. So I hope you take this challenge and join me in writing a poem. And it's very simple. All you do is follow this structure as I have laid out on the screen right here. And I will make sure to put this in the description so that you can find it more easily. So I'll just show you what I did. I took Psalm 51 and was reading through it, and I found a word that stuck out, that tugged on me a little bit. Then I took a moment, and I paused, and then I went to writing this poem. So first we have the psalm, "Have mercy on me, O God, according to your steadfast love, according to your abundant mercy. Blot out my transgressions, wash me thoroughly from my iniquity, and cleanse me from my sin." And I heard that word wash. And so, using that formula, I wrote a quick poem. Wash, that's the word that stuck out to me. 2 words to describe the title are cleansing action. 3 action words about the title are drawing out sin. Line 4 is 4 words about a feeling about the title. With bright cleansing power is what I wrote. And then finally, line 5 is a single word to refer back to the title, the first line. Redeem. And that's it. There's no pressure to these poems. All you do is write some words and move on. If it doesn't come to you, well, write some other words and it'll be okay. I wouldn't spend more than about 45 or 50 seconds on one of these. It's a new way for many of us to engage in Scripture, but I think it's one worth exploring. I think it's a nice time to try something new. So, in the spirit of trying something new and in the knowledge of our forgiveness, we are reminded of this psalm once again, Psalm 51. "For I know my transgressions and my sin is ever before me. Against you, you alone I have sinned and done what is evil in your sight, so that you are justified in your sentence and blameless when you pass judgment. Indeed, I was born guilty, a sinner, when my mother conceived me." Psalm 51 is a rough psalm, but we are reminded of our sin, of our transgression through it. And therefore, we are reminded of the love that God has for us, even though we sin. It's a very Lenten thing to do. And so, until next time, when we come together again to worship the Lord, peace be with you.